Police in Hong Kong have arrested 370 people after renewed protests against a sweeping new Chinese security law. The legislation could see pro-democracy protesters jailed for life on charges of subversion and secession. At least 10 people have already been arrested, which has been heavily criticised by European governments. The UK has offered Hong Kongers an exit plan, though, promising a plan to citizenship for eligible residents of the territory. Jeremy East reports.
On the streets of Hong Kong, familiar scenes under a new reality for the territory's pro-democracy movement. Life under China's national security law has officially begun, and thousands defied tear gas and water cannons to protest the crackdown. Police have made their first arrests using their newly extended powers. Among those taken away, a man carrying a flag calling for Hong Kong's independence. Campaigners say that even speaking out against the tough new measures puts them at risk.
I usually say a few words in English to the international community and the media, but now I can't because of this law. If I say anything to you, I'll be arrested when I walk out of this building. Usually I say a few words, but now I can't because of this law.
The adoption of the legislation came on the 23rd anniversary of the territory's handover from the UK to China. The significance of that date wasn't lost on the government in Westminster. It responded by promising a new route to citizenship for some 3 million eligible Hong Kongers.
We made clear, Mr. Speaker, that if China continued down this path, we would introduce a new route for those with British national overseas status to enter the UK, granting them limited leave to remain with the ability to live and work in the UK and thereafter to apply for citizenship.
The US and the European Union have also voiced deep concern over the new national security law, but the allies haven't agreed on possible punitive measures against Beijing, and for the moment, China is only facing harsh words from the West. Jeremy East, Euronews.
For more on the situation in Hong Kong, I'm joined by Alvin Chung from New York University's US Asia Law Institute. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us here on Euronews this evening. We've heard there Boris Johnson and other British officials saying that this is a breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. So does the treaty have a future?
That's very much an open question. As a matter of international law, the treaty is still supposed to have legal effect, but for several years now, we've seen Beijing and Hong Kong officials openly repudiate the joint declaration. So there is a very real sense in which the UK's belated recognition that the PRC has breached the joint declaration is too little and far too late. And beyond that, of course, there is the question of what consequences there will be. The PRC does not accept compulsory jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. So then the question becomes, what other methods are there for the UK and for the international community to impose costs on the PRC?
And what can they do then? Because there's already been harsh words that have been signalled towards the Chinese People's Republic government. There's already been voices of condemnation coming from the international community. Barring sanctions, is there anything that the international community can do?
Well, as you say, the international community has said a great deal of things, but they have not been backed up by very much in the way of concrete consequences for specific officials responsible for these policies. That is one of the logical next steps, as is the welcoming and accommodation of Hong Kong residents who now, quite understandably, may wish to leave.
And we're already seeing that chilling effect happening. When you think back to the protests that we've previously seen, the streets strewn with a large destruction happening, the huge turnout, 1 million plus people at some of these rallies. When you look at the protests that have happened today, there's not that many people compared to what there was before. This is going to have some severe lasting impacts on those pro-democracy voices inside Hong Kong, isn't it?
Not only will it affect pro-democracy voices inside Hong Kong, it will affect them outside of Hong Kong. Article 38 of the legislation declares that it applies even to acts conducted outside of Hong Kong by individuals who are not Hong Kong permanent residents. This puts anybody who criticizes the Hong Kong or PRC governments at risk of being prosecuted, potentially under mainland law in mainland courts, the minute they set foot in Hong Kong jurisdiction. That includes Cathay Pacific flights, that includes transiting through Hong Kong airport.
So, Alvin, then just quickly, is this path to UK citizenship really a lifeline if people could still be prosecuted by China?
It's very difficult to say without knowing the concrete details of the plan, but I would sound one particular note of caution, which is that China does not recognize dual citizenship. Now, many Hong Kong residents are holders of so-called home return permits, which can only be obtained by PRC citizens. For as long as such individuals do not take active steps to declare that they are not PRC citizens to the authorities, they remain extremely vulnerable to arbitrary governmental conduct. And in fact, as we've seen in the cases of Gui Minhai and Li Bo, the abducted booksellers, even that may not be sufficient to protect them.
Alvin Chung joining us there. Thank you so much for your insights.